What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. As always, your blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And remember, this is the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Do know I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. It's Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, the last few Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Black Lady Magic has been happening from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Bolivia, but not tonight. I'm talking about Dr. Tachi, who's with us right now, and Leah Miller. They've been having some epic conversations. I've been getting some great response from you, the audience, and we appreciate that. And don't take it for granted. Unfortunately, Leah cannot make it tonight, but this afternoon, Tachi said, hey, if you want me to come on, I'll come on. I said, that's too easy an offer to deny. So Dr. Tachi is with us tonight. And one of her favorite things to chat about is tech. And if those who don't know about Dr. Tachi, she's the host of an outstanding live stream called Mediascope, which she did earlier on this evening, 2 episodes, 6 o'clock on Periscope and Facebook Live, and then 5 o'clock she did on Instagram Live. And the interesting thing is she did it without a producer. So she's done a little extra work today, probably, and we still get some of her precious and valuable time. Dr. Tachi, how are we doing this evening?
Oh, fabulous as per usual. And you, Dr. Vibe?
Blessed, highly favored, magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. You're getting into that I call the top 10 category of people that have been on the Dr. Vibe Show. So that is a good thing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it's a very that's good company. And we're glad to have you. Well, we could get you to talk about your background, but you know what, people? Go to my website. That'll give you a background. So it gives you a reason to go to my website, and you want to hear about tech stuff. So before we came on live, Dr. Tachi and I were saying, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about? And I said to Dr. Tachi, over the last few days, even up to today, I do some streaming on Periscope with I guess an app they call Periscope Producer. And I got an email from Periscope today saying, by May 25th, you have to agree to their new updated terms and conditions if you're going to be using a third-party application. So I presented this to Dr. Tachi, and she mentioned GDPR. And I had seen these letters in another email. I had no idea what it means. So Dr. Tachi is going to start off our epic conversation. I talk about GDPR. The mic and screen is yours.
Thank you. So GDPR, and I'm sure you've been seeing this all over. Well, first of all, you've probably been seeing, as you mentioned, Dr. Vibe, so many privacy update things, on terms of service things. Every single platform that you've used, you've probably gotten some email or some notification when you actually use the platform. So all of this is happening because of GDPR. That stands for General Data Protection Regulations. This is out of Europe. The EU member countries have decided that in order to better protect consumers' data in light of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and we can't just blame Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, because this has been a problem from before. Because remember, not Experian, who is the Equifax? The Equifax breach?
Yes, yep.
That didn't just affect Americans now. So I think what we have to realize is when these things happen, it's even if it is a, quote, American company, it is not just Americans that are affected. Globally, there's some sort of impact. And so the GDPR is meant to protect the data of EU member citizens, the citizens of EU member countries. The thing is, it's not just the EU. That's why we're seeing all these privacy things now, because all of these apps, all of these platforms also exist and do business in the EU. And so in order to continue to operate in some capacity in EU member countries, they must accept the General Data Protection Regulation, General Data Protection Regulations. You have to accept those. And so that also means that the members on your site need to accept the new terms of service and or privacy rules that have been set up because of that. So this is not just a U.S. thing. This is global.
Okay. How is this going to affect privacy going forward? Have you had a chance to dig into that area?
A little bit. So in terms of privacy going forward, privacy is of key importance. So you're going to be getting a lot of, besides these notifications, you're going to notice probably some changes to the way apps operate, the way data is collected, the way there's going to be a lot of, and this is already a case, especially when you look at Facebook, that you're able to opt out of certain things, whereas before, and it's clear where you can opt out. A lot of the problem with Facebook in particular is if you looked at their terms of service, it was the length of a dissertation. Yet my dissertation was 200 pages, and it was about that same length, although my dissertation was more interesting, I'd like to think. But it was dissertation length, and suffice to say, most people, if you read the first page, I'm very proud of you, because most of us did not read those terms of service. And because of that, because of them being so cumbersome, and they're within their rights to do things because they put it in the terms of service. So they can do these things legally, but the thing is the print is small and the terms of service are long. So generally, most consumers are not reading them. So you're going to notice probably simpler terms of service, simpler privacy rules, and you're going regulations, and you're also going to notice that you're going to get these notifications about such. I don't know if you noticed on Facebook, but you probably got a slew of notifications once all this happened in terms of what has changed. So I think there's going to be more transparency. And I say transparency lightly because the moment somebody's back is turned, I am convinced they're going to go back to business as usual, because this is what they always do. They get caught, they get slapped on the hand, they act right and fine and upright for a minute, and then they go back to business as usual. I do think that this is a slightly different era where consumers are now more savvy of the fact that their data is being collected and their data is being used and also sold. Now, as to whether or not they care, that's a different case, because nothing has been done on the part with Facebook. You have not had consumers or users leaving in droves. They haven't. They've also done decently on Wall Street. They're not suffering because of what happened with the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The thing that would have caused them to suffer would have been a mass exodus of users because of a breach of trust. So people still don't trust them, but this is why they're sticking around, because there is no other platform that does what Facebook does. So until there is another platform that debuts, that does what they do and more, people are going to stick around.
Was it inevitable that we were going to get to this stage in the journey of the internet?
Yes. Yes, and the big reason why is because the internet was not regulated from the beginning. I remember very well, because, I've been studying, I studied communication all of my adult life, all of my adult college career has been in the study of communication. And I remember very specifically when I got to graduate school, that was 1996. And that's when the Telecommunication Act of 1996 came out. And that was the big talk on the Hill. And of course, I went to school in Washington, D.C. So I'm like in the air. I'm in the field, and then in the area where all of this regulation, FCC regulation, is happening. And so we spent sessions and sessions talking about these new rules, and a lot of that, the changes, and that was the first sweeping change to telecommunication policy since the 1930s when they came out. The FCC used to be the FRC, the Federal Radio Commission, okay? Then it started to encompass other types of media that were starting to emerge. So in the 1930s, they had the first Telecommunication Act of, I believe it was 1938. They had not done anything or updated anything until 1996. So that tells you 60 some odd years had gone by and no changes had been made. So they made this sweeping overhaul, this sweeping change, and part of that was because of the proliferation of the internet. Now, the internet has been around since the 60s, but as a consumer tool, you're really only talking about the late 80s and early 1990s in terms of some consumers beginning to have it. So they did not account for the fact that people were going to use it for fraud. People were going to do indecent things on the internet, that people were going to be selling things, that people were going to be using it for research. So the good and the bad. And they didn't account for it. And their mistake was not roping in and having regulation at the beginning, because that's why it's gotten out of hand now.
So since it wasn't, how can I say, managed in the beginning, and now it's gone off to this way, do you see the current administration in the States wanting to bring it back this way, or is it there's so much money involved we won't get a happy medium?
There is a lot of money involved. The current brouhaha, as you know, for the FCC is the
net neutrality.
Thank you. Net neutrality. That is the current brouhaha that's there. And at one point, it's looking like it was going to pass and had quote unquote passed, but it's still an uphill battle. There's still a ways to go before that actually the repeal becomes law. And again, that repeal is, and not even just in my opinion, in the opinion and in the estimation of a lot of people, that repeal was done for the benefit of the companies. If you look at the chairman, Ajit Pai, who was he a lawyer for before? Verizon. Who benefits directly from the repeal? These telecommunication companies like Verizon. So there's no secret or surprise there when it comes to that. So, this type of thing, the FCC and the regulation and all of that, these are in the interest, unfortunately, of big companies. It benefits them for this to be repealed because, as you know, you can then throttle access. You can charge more for so-called fast lanes and slow down the ad for those. So it creates another digital divide. For the people who can afford to pay for faster access, they can. Well, how about the people who can't afford to pay for faster access? We're already, there's still a divide, regardless of how far we've come. There's still a divide. So now you want to create a further rift by dividing who can have access to what. It's despicable.
I think it's eventually going to pass, because I know there was a vote today, I think, in the House of Representatives,
yes,
where it did pass, but in the Senate, it's a large majority of Republicans. So they're saying probably by the end of next month, net neutrality is going to be commonplace throughout America.
That's what they're saying, which is sad. But I mean, there's still a little bit of a battle before it's not over yet, but it's looking like that's going to happen. Again, now it's just these types of things are up to the whims of the administration, basically. Right now, the United States has an administration who seemingly doesn't give a damn about anyone but special interests and big corporations. And as such, they're going to enact laws and regulation that is to the benefit of these special interests and regulations, and damn everybody else. That's basically how it's coming off.
I'll let you get off your soapbox before you get pounding too hard on it. Let's go to another conversation topipic.
Absolutely.
So what's been hot in tech over the last little bit? I haven't heard a lot of one of the hot things I've heard about in tech is people getting their skills on the Amazon Echo platform. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. So you mean by skills, you mean
their podcasts, their broadcasts?
Oh, their podcast. Yeah, that's big. In fact, many people are looking at platforms, and you know this also as a podcaster, platforms that allow you to have your to integrate Alexa and to have your podcast on Amazon devices,
yes,
which is huge because that opens up to a new a new population of people besides the people that we know already listen to podcasts. We know this. But now you have people who may find you by accident because they have a Dot or an Echo or some Alexa-enabled device. So I think that podcasting is still the new black. At NAB this year, they had a whole section dedicated to podcasting, as they did last year, but it was bigger this year, I understand. So that was, is still the new black. Voice is it. So if we're talking about technology, video is huge. We know this. We know that many algorithms are being changed so that they detect video and push and put video first. So there's a video first type of mantra in the tech and social industries. Voice is also huge. Voice is huge. And you have many people that are pushing this whole voice thing. And so I think that if we're going to look at it, that I don't want to say the next big thing, but kind of the next big thing is voice.
Yes. Agreed. I know there's some things that you want to maybe share with our audience, so please feel free if there are specific things you want to chat about.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm enjoying your line of questioning. So,
I think that's huge. I want to talk about the whole area of podcasting. We just want to continue a little bit more of that because it's interesting. I started out as a podcaster.
Yeah.
And why do you think podcasting has become so hot?
That's a good question. I think a number of things. Number one, the equipment required, now you need equipment, but it doesn't require the same amount of equipment as video. When you're talking about video, you need sound, but then you also need the video equipment. So you're talking about a double dose of equipment that you need to invest in. And for relatively low point of entry, you can buy podcasting equipment. And, in fact, some people's iPhones are even good enough to podcast with on if you clean up the audio afterwards. And there are free, unlike with video editing, you can use something like Audacity. And you know what I'm saying? So you've got all these free sound editors out there. So I think there's a difference in terms of cost of equipment, which is a barrier to entry for some people in terms of video. So whereas you may not have the equipment to do a really top-notch YouTube video or YouTube channel, but you can get your hands on some equipment to do a top-notch podcast.
Okay, great. When you're doing Mediascope, over the last few weeks, what are some of the tech stories that people have given high response or high engagement with?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if that is a fair assessment because the Mediascope audience is so dedicated that they like everything. But I think
it's a different audience here, so anything you have to share it's a definite, like I'm speaking, yes, we have a number of people watching here that also watch Mediascope, but I don't know it. I also want to drive people to Mediascope.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. And Divine Right is here. Hey.
Yes, Divine Right.
Hey, Divine Right.
Yeah, Divine Right is saying here, hey, Chetachi and Dr. Vibe, this is very helpful. I felt as if my email box blew up with privacy notices, so thanks for clearing things up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that transparency is needed. And it was not going to happen. So in a way, it's terrible, but thank God that the Cambridge Analytica scandal did happen. Because now we're talking about when you have problems with other platforms, it's a big deal. But Facebook is the largest platform. They have in excess of I'm sure by now they're at 2.5 billion because they haven't lost anyone. So you're talking about nearly, on your way to 3 billion worldwide average daily users. So it's a huge deal. This is an awful lot of, and there are only 7 billion people in the world.
Right. Right.
So you're talking about, 1/3 of the people on Earth Just and that's not necessary, but just looking at it percentage-wise, almost 1/3 of the people on Earth, if they were all unique users, have a Facebook account. That is power, and that's a lot of power to have. So the transparency is needed. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's good, and it's interesting because they still won't admit that they're a media company.
You know what? They had to backtrack, though. They said, well, we are a media company, but we're a different type of media company. No, which you are not. You are a media company. Any way you slice it, no matter how many times the ball bounces, there are still no bones in ice cream. You are a media company. So, if you didn't catch that, that was a hip-hop reference. But
there you
anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just find it just fascinating that they keep on. They're so big now. They are so big that it's almost a point that they're uncontrollable.
And that's the problem with getting to be too big the way they are. And this has always been my contention, that Facebook is too big. They're entirely too big, and they've become this jack of all trades, master of none, in a sense. Their hands are in so many things: hardware, services for enterprise, VR, AI, NAACP. I mean, name anything, they're into it. So because of that, and in my opinion, they don't seem to have. They attract talent away from other places to deal with this. So, for example, the head of news at Facebook is Campbell Brown, who, of course, was what was she, NBC? She was a
NBC.
Yeah, journalist for NBC, right. So she knows news, and she knows journalism. But because you were a journalist, and I don't know if she was ever a producer, to me that is a different thing altogether than running a news company and understanding the business end and what, I'm a journalist myself. I know journalism and I understand it. But do I know it enough to head up a news company? That's a different thing altogether. And again, I don't know her entire background in terms of what she's been doing since, but it's interesting. So to me, they seem to attract an awful lot of people who are somehow affiliated with the departments that they're heading in terms of knowledge, but are not the all-being or all-knowing knowledge, if that makes any sense. Now, nobody knows everything, but it seems to me that they need to have a stronger circle of people around these different concepts to make it work. And do you have to do everything? It's like they see somebody doing something and they have to do it too. To me, that waters down your brand and it weakens everything you do. You don't have to do everything. Be the best at the things you do. Yeah.
And we're talking, and just building on the whole news area, how has tech, in your opinion, been good and not good when it comes to news coverage?
Tech is 100% wonderful and necessary in the age of news reporting that we're in now. It has been great because it has expanded the amount of news that is able to be put out there. We still have the gatekeepers. We still have the morning news meetings and the afternoon news meetings to determine what goes on the air. We still have those things. So you still have gatekeepers, and not every story is out there. But because of things like technology, because now every news station, let's talk about television news, every news station has a website, right? And so not only they're using their websites for multiple things, they may each newscaster, each reporter or anchor may have a blog that's connected to the site. They all have Twitter. Every news person has Twitter. Twitter is like the news app, and they update on Twitter. So they're using technology to extend and expand their reach and the amount of stories that they can cover, which is fantastic. Whereas before, all we heard about was what there was space for in the newspaper, what they had time to talk about on the radio or television news, and that was it. But now, because of the proliferation of the internet, you're able to expand and extend what you can cover, though there are still gatekeepers, okay? The other end of that is this whole movement towards citizen journalism. I shouldn't say towards citizen journalism, but this whole movement including citizen journalism, where you, as a private citizen, happen to be on the scene at something that is happening, and you are reporting from your own estimation what is going on. So we get to see on Periscope, on Facebook Live, on your in your Twitter feed, wherever you happen to be talking about this event, we get to see firsthand and live updates of what's happening when the news can't get there. The issue with it, so that's how it's good. All of this is how it's good. The issue with this is there are some people who don't need to talk. There are some people who are using these social platforms as a platform to spew hatred and to spread half-truths and outright lies. But people, for some reason, especially if it already agrees with your ideology, there's no cognitive dissonance there, they have a tendency to believe some people that are sounding official or whatever. So you have a blog, and it's a blog that deals with XYZ. Oh, because it's a blog, it must be official. So that's the other end of technology, that it has also caused us, and we could also argue that we never really did use our sense of common sense or our sense of monitoring what or filtering, that we never really used our filters. But even more so now, because of technology, there's more information out there, more to sort through, more reason for us to be lazy and not to question, and therefore more opportunities for us to believe what is not true.
Do you have any concerns about the tech space at this time, whether it's hardware, whether it's hiring practices not being like the prominent members of the tech industry not reflecting the user base? What are some of the concerns that you may have in regards to tech at this time?
Oh, I'm extremely concerned about representation. You know, that's a big thing for me. And when I say we, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about people of color. We're still not adequately represented in the tech space. I don't care how many Me Too's, I don't care how many Oscars, hashtag Oscars so white we have. We're still not being, or those types of movements, we're still not being adequately represented in the tech space. Part of it, and I can't completely blame Silicon Valley. We have to look back at where we're steering our children, okay, where we're steering the types of professions that we're steering them towards, the majors we're steering them towards, what they think and what they feel they can believe and believe that they can be. So, you know, it's a societal problem. It's not just Silicon Valley, but they are 100% responsible for not making sure that the people who make decisions about technology don't reflect the people who use technology. And when you look at people of color, we use technology. We really use it. We have, especially with black people, we have had a mistrust of technology in the past, and some of us still now, because of the terrible things that technology has done to us and has been used to do to us. So I understand this mistrust of technology. I actually got my dissertation like 13 years ago. So this mistrust of technology. But we're starting to see that if we don't grasp technology, we will be left behind, and that we don't get the opportunities that others who embrace technology have. So we're starting to see this, and we're starting to understand this. But Silicon Valley has not caught up with that yet. And that's troubling to me. It's troubling that you should have to, why should you have to beg? I mean, here's the thing. Do you know how many, let me just talk about, you know, black people. Do you know how many black people have iPhones?
Millions.
We are contributing to your bottom line. How dare you not have us in on the decision process? How very dare you? So it's things like that when you start to look at it in terms of what we are contributing in terms of being consumers, but we're not on the production end, number one, and the decision making end, number two. That is very troubling.
But before we go further, I just want to catch up on comments that Divine Right has had, saying here,
Okay.
and now the privacy notices are, quote, easier to read, unquote, suddenly. Yes, agreed. Facebook is great, but a bit scary. And she says, LOL, at, quote, some people don't need to talk, unquote, reminds me of Facebook Live. Everyone doesn't need to be on Facebook Live, YouTube, etc. Just nuts.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, well, going back to your point about technology and what it has done, it has emboldened people, because the thing about it is, the good thing about it is that it lets you freely express. The bad thing about it is it lets you freely express. And not everyone who has something to say has an informed opinion. And I'm also talking about you celebrities. I am tired of, look, I don't need for the Michael Vicks and all these other people in the world to be the voice of Black America, or anybody who is not, and I don't mean to pick on him, but you know, in the, and he hasn't really said anything, I'm just saying in just using a name, but in the past and in the present, there have been celebrities who have gone on shows and used social media platforms, especially Twitter, to talk about things that air out, well, this shouldn't be, well, why are you talking about it? This is not your area. There are people who have actually studied and understand and make it their business to know and to give informed commentary on it. Yours is not informed. Therefore, Madame, I'll thank you to sit down, because you don't know. The same way I stay in my lane, because I'm a doctor, does not mean I can do surgery. And you should report me if I ever attempt to do surgery. So that's not my lane. So I don't speak about that. Stay in your lane. And that's not saying that if you're a celebrity, you cannot have an opinion. You absolutely can. You're a citizen of this country or whatever country. You do deserve to have an opinion on things. But the problem is when your opinion becomes the voice of XYZ community and it's uninformed. If you're going to do it, make sure you take the time to study and understand and make that part of your craft. Otherwise, don't.
Is there a device that the tech world doesn't have out right now that the public is looking for, or is there an area of opportunity you see that the tech world is not addressing at this time when it comes to the public at all? Or go ahead.
Oh gosh, I really, again, you know, I'm interested in disparities, and I really would like to see technology being better used to address health disparities.
Okay.
You don't really see that. And in fact, technology, and I'm not talking about the technology in terms of medical technology for things, that too, but I'm really talking more about like for instructional technology, and AI, VR, AR.
Yeah, okay, let's just stop right there. We've been chatting about those platforms for a few years now, and have they made the impact that you thought they would have made at this time?
No. I think, and here's part of the reason why. Technology, there are stages to technology. So there are 3 stages. Let me see if I can remember them. You have the innovation stage, right, where it's just really an idea and people are talking about it. Then you have the adoption stage, where a few people or a few groups of people have it and they're using it. And then you have the stage where it becomes, well, in mass media, you have the mass media stage where everybody is using it. So I'll just say there's a stage of mass where the masses start to use it. So again, the adoption of technology is a process. It seems like it's quick now because there's so much technology and people are quick to jump on it, but it's really not that quick of a process. It takes time for people to accept and use technology. So for some things, I'm like, yeah, damn it, I thought we would have been farther by now or further by now with these things. But then in some places, I'm like, it takes time for people to warm up to technology and for it to be fully adopted as a mass technology.
Why do you think there's been the lack of progress in the area of health?
Well, I think in terms of health, there's so much. Number one, expense. It's already very expensive, and expense in general. Western rates tend to send. Obviously, many of these technologies are invented in Western countries. Some, and some are in Eastern countries, like in Asia as well. But the expense of that and the research associated with getting it there, a lot. It's almost like, and I could be off the mark, but it seems like 1/3 or more of the cost of these innovations is dedicated to the research of it and not the actual building of it. Right. And so I think cost is really prohibitive in terms of things becoming a mass medium. So let's talk about it. When we think about the medical industries, we think about doctors and hospitals and things like that. We often operate from the assumption that all hospitals are rich, right, that all doctors are killing it in terms of the money they make, et cetera, et cetera. And that's simply not true. When you look at, there are many hospitals, et cetera, that operate at a deficit, although the medicine costs way too much, sometimes for no reason. But there are hospitals that operate at a deficit, especially when you're talking about those hospitals and those medical centers that service communities of color, that service sometimes rural communities. So, there's not a whole lot of money to be made there. There are a lot of sacrifices. These centers don't often have the money to invest. And some of these private doctors' offices as well, they don't have, especially if you're servicing communities of color. There's one doctor I know here who is primarily, his patients are Haitian. They're of Haitian descent and Haitian immigrants. These are not the people that you're going to be able to get the $200,000 laser in
right.
to treat.
No, that's
so
not gonna
there's
happen.
A disparity there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to pose an interesting conversation piece for you. Give us some of the tech tools that are very valuable that you use, and is there any way that they could be better? Or are they serving their purpose, or are there opportunities for them to be better? Because I know you use various tech tools. Mm-hmm. For example, I know you do video editing. Mm-hmm. What tech tool do you use for video editing?
I use Adobe Premiere primarily now, but I'm also familiar with Final Cut. So I was using Final Cut, and I recently made the switch to Adobe Premiere.
Why did you move from Final Cut?
Because my computer
yes.
I updated it, and then it decided that the version of Final Cut I had was too old, so that I was going to have to buy, the new version. I said, oh, I will not. Let me just go Adobe Cloud where it updates. And so I do pay for that, but I find the value in having it updated rather than to wait. And I did have that version of Final Cut for a while, but then when it becomes obsolete, I'm like, this is almost a waste. And I was like, I still have projects that I need to do, and I can't do anything. So let me just go to Adobe Cloud. That was my reasoning.
And how was the transition from Final Cut to Adobe, and is it a better tech hardware or software than Final Cut Pro?
Here's the thing. To me, they're about the same in terms of functionality. There's a lot that Adobe can do, and then you can use. The nice thing about Adobe is that you get access to the Adobe Cloud, and so you have access to Adobe Audition for sound, also After Effects to add things to effects to your video, and all these different applications. And so that's why I like Adobe. Having Adobe, because it's not just Premiere. I have access to all of that. But function-wise, for me, it's pretty much the same. I'm the type of person that I don't need a whole lot of tutorial for some things. Like, I'm good with figuring things out. So if there's something I don't know how to do, I will watch a YouTube video and then, figure it out. So, but I'm good with, that's why, which is probably terrible, I don't read directions a lot of the time. I figure it out. And so when I made the switch over to Adobe Premiere, I recognized, like, okay, this has this. I went through all the menus. I said, okay, Final Cut has this, Final Cut has this, Final Cut has this. So there was very little that was so different that I couldn't navigate it. So I'm loving Premiere.
Well, you're blessed because I've had Adobe Premiere for, I was given a version of it, and I cannot figure it out. It just,
really?
I find it very, and I have to be totally transparent here. It's very difficult. I've given up trying to understand it. I know it's a great piece of software, but and I guess it's maybe my learning style. I've tried to watch videos on it. I try to understand, and it's very challenging to me. And I won't tell people what I'm using for video editing because they'll go, really? But because what I'm using is very user friendly for the level I'm at, I'd like to get higher, but it's like Final Cut, can't understand it. Adobe, can't understand. To me, it's one of those things, I get what they're doing, but I do not find those user-friendly at all.
You know what? We'll have to do a little section where I'll do a tutorial for you because it's really not so bad, to be honest, the both of them. I think the thing is, this is what you have to remember. Most video is very simple. You are not trying to make the Avengers Infinity War. So most of what you're doing is very simple. You're talking about simple transitions like cuts and fades, and that's it. So really, you probably will need very few tools for what it is that you do.
That I do,
so
yes.
I can help you with that. That's not a problem.
Much appreciated. Divine Right said a little while back, and freely express immediately. They can instantly post their stuff. When we're talking about people in regards to social media, instantly post their stuff without even thinking about what they are saying and any impact it can have, whether it's positive or negative. So this brings me to the point. Has tech come to the point where it is become, on the whole, very user-friendly?
I think, yeah, for some tech, yes. For some tech, what we're talking about, what we were just talking about, editing programs, like there'll always be the professional level of editing programs that make those of us that are in film feel like we have a skill that nobody else has, because they really could make it very simple, like an iMovie thing, but I digress. But I think, yes, tech has really become user-friendly, and I think tech has adapted to users as opposed to before, where we really had to adapt to technology. Part of the thing is, and this is a characteristic of many types of people, but I'm going to point to millennials for a particular reason. When you look at the generation, so the generation that had grown up with, I mean, we've all always had technology. Everybody has had technology. Newspapers are technology. I think it's, we confuse electronic technology with technology in general. The wheel is technology. So anything that makes your, life easier can be considered technology. Extends your senses can be technology. But I think it has gotten simpler. When we point to, going back to the millennial thing, when you point to millennials, they don't want to know and don't care how it works. They just need for it to work. So I just need to press this button and have it work. And because millennials are the largest generation right now, people are hip to the fact of, if it doesn't work the way they want it to work, they're not going to buy. Everybody is after the millennial dollar. Why? Because there's so many of them. So because of that, I think, and not just for them, but I think things were simplified down. Now, Gen X, which is mine, like I'm on the cusp of millennialdom and Gen X, we want to know how things work. Part of the reason is because we had to. If you did not know how to hook up your printer to your computer, too bad. If you did not know how to do X, Y, Z, you just didn't use it. So we needed to know how things worked, and therefore we are the ones that are like, okay, well, how did this work? How can I? And I know even with myself, I'm like, okay, I need to know how this works. How do I deconstruct? How do I do X, Y, Z? So, sorry, tropics.
That's classic.
And I have all these lights on, so of course they're attracted. So we want to know how these things work. But millennials don't necessarily. Now, that's a blanket statement. Some do, but the differences in the generations are there. So going back to your original question, it's simpler because consumers need for it to be simpler in order to buy it.
Now, isn't that interesting what you talk about the millennials and Gen X? Does that affect the quality and price points? Now, because you're saying that we want to make things simpler, easier. I see sometimes I guess maybe the best example I can say is Apple.
Okay.
Their products, not cheap.
Right.
Versus other companies that make the same type of product. There's still a divide. For example, is Apple product, in your opinion, worth the price people are paying for it?
My opinion, yes.
Why?
I'll tell you this. I have had PCs before, okay? I went Apple. I've always used Apple. Howard University was an Apple campus when I was there. We had PCs, but they were very Apple. So I'd always used Apple from the time I got to Howard. And again, when I learned all my video editing and film editing old school, reel to reel and all of that. But then somewhere in the 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 early 2000s, everything changed to non-linear, where you're using computers to edit. The computers that could handle that, Apple. So I learned everything that for production, etc., on an Apple. So of course, when it came time for me to buy equipment, I was only looking at Apple. And what I found is, and I did have a PC laptop that I was using, back early in like 2006, that I had purchased. And obviously, PC laptops are cheaper than Apple laptops are. But it did not last me. If it lasted 3 years without acting up, I'm lucky. I recently got a new Apple, a new MacBook Pro. But I still have my old MacBook Pro. Yes, it's slow, but it still works. And it's 10 years old at this point. So one thing I will say, yes, I do think it's worth it because they do make their machines to last. Their dongles, no. Mm-hmm. That's how they make their money.
Exactly. So then you were saying earlier, you still have a concern about tech addressing the divide in regards to representation. Do you feel tech is doing a better job of servicing different types of consumers with their products?
In terms of...
how can I put it this way? I gotta rephrase this question.
Okay.
Is tech, when it comes to meeting consumers' needs, mm-hmm. You have, for example, go back to the Apple world, servicing the high end, servicing the low end. Are they still doing a good job? And also another conversation piece on that. What's the hot product right now in tech, if there is one? Because I don't see any hot product right now in tech.
Yeah, okay. Well, that is a great observation. So are they doing a good job of
meeting people's needs?
Meeting people's needs. I think they're doing an adequate job of it, or they're doing a good job of convincing you that you need it for X, Y, Z.
Okay, so there's where a little bit of a difference is. Needs versus wants are driving people to have, you got to have this. They're still on that.
We don't need any of this. Let's be clear.
Okay.
You don't need to have a smartphone. You could go and get yourself a Nokia flip phone that works and still make phone calls. Still have that be your primary phone and not have a problem. My mother still has a flip phone because she got a smartphone. She's like, this is just too much. Let me just go and get another flip phone. So, and there's actually a movement, especially among celebrities, to have like be simple and have the flip phone. So there's a movement. So they may have another phone, but they have a flip phone as well. So you don't need these things, but the industry creates a want, and therefore you think you need them. How often do you hear when it's time for an upgrade for a phone, it's like, oh, I need to get another phone upgrade? No, you really don't. You don't have to. They've created this need, and see, it's an artificially inflated need, because what has happened is that it's kind of a need, but not really a need. So things have gotten faster. Networks have gotten faster. From 4G now we're getting to 5G. So your older phones are going to struggle on that, or they won't even be able to connect to a 5G network. Then you also have, in terms of the internet, we're talking about generations and generations of this internet where we are now in terms of things like HTML5, etc. So the internet has gotten so fast that these older machines can't really keep up. So some of it is because networks and systems are getting faster that you need to upgrade in order to keep up with it. But then there's that other end of it of, well, you don't really have to have this. Some of it is a want.
Okay. So, and then the other part of my conversation piece, I don't see no hot product right now in tech. Am I missing out on something?
Yeah, no, not so much. And, this is the interesting thing. I watch all of these events. So we are now in the season for things being released, etc. We just finished 3 developers conferences, F8, which was Facebook, Microsoft happened, the Google I/O Developers Conference. So we just finished 3 developers conferences. And those are for developers that are developing apps, etc., for these platforms. But at the same time, what they've been doing, what has been popular to do, is to release some of the hardware that is coming out as well. Hardware and software. There was nothing that came out of any of these developers conferences that was like, oh my, that is completely new. There was nothing that came out. And when these things debut, they're going to debut at the things like CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, at NAB, National Association of Broadcasters. These are the show. There's so many shows and conferences, and then these events where things debut, and maybe it is just me, maybe it is just you, but I also have not noticed anything that is the hot, must-have, go-to product. Part of the thing is because things like AI have not developed far enough to warrant new products that integrate it. There's some promise in terms of this IoT, or what's known as the Internet of Things, these smart appliances and the smart home thing. Internet of Things even can go so far as to your car is a smart car, and bridges will have internet or IoT technology in them to let your car know this bridge is icy, you might want to take it. So, things like that, but that hasn't happened yet. So because we have not come far enough in terms of the development of AI, in terms of the development not the development, but the integration of VR and AR, there's nothing groundbreaking.
Right. Just to follow the tropics. Just to catch up here, Divine Right says, true about flip phones. My grandmother is 94 and has had only 2 cell phones in about 15 years. Both flip phones. I'm finding that the, quote, old school, unquote, cell phones have more longevity than these smartphones.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And remember, with the smartphones, there are so many moving parts, and they're doing 10 million things. That is your movie theater. That is your phone, your cell phone. That is your home phone. That is your navigation system. That is your Fitbit or your heart monitor type thing. It is everything. It is in the palm of your hand is this computer that does everything, not just like 1 or 2 things like the old flip phones used to do. And because of that, when something goes wrong, everything goes down.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing, that there's so much stuff going on in there. It's just like, I think sometimes complexity is not a good thing.
I agree. I'd always been of the mindset, because my mother actually put this in us, because, you know, back in the day when they used to have these combo things, these combination, okay, let's take the TV VCR type things. The problem with having a combo is when one thing breaks, you have to take the whole thing in for it to be fixed.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, I have an iPad tablet. I can make phone calls from it with my cell phone provider. Have I ever done that? No. I use my cell phone to make cell phone calls. Yes, I do some stuff on. I try to keep very, how can I say, device specific.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even though all of these devices now can do a number or a myriad of different things, but the more things that you have piled into a piece of technology, the more hurtful it is when something goes wrong with it.
Oh, and I like Divine Right says, the cell phones seem to break or crash right when your contract is up.
No, exactly.
I wonder if that's purposely done.
You know what? Here's the thing. You know that most cell phone contracts are about 3 years, and so every 3 years, you have a 2-year contract, but you can me anyway. Every 3 years, I can get a new one. Yeah. I'm up for a new one. But mine, it's been about 3 years now, and it still works, and the camera's amazing. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna roll with it.
Well, I'll be transparent. First of all, I do not believe in contracts. Second of all, I do month to month. And when I need a new phone, I believe it or not, I buy it used or I buy it on Kijiji.
See, exactly.
It blows my mind what people spend on phones.
I
don't get that. Okay,
so the average smartphone now is upwards of $600. Forget about iPhone X and all of that, which, by the way, is not doing what they expected sales-wise.
I was going to ask about that phone. Like, in the eyes of Apple, do you think it's been a little bit of a disappointment?
It has been a definite disappointment. They were expecting more. And the iPhone X doesn't do anything more amazing in my estimation than the iPhone 8 does. And so really, you need to have a justification to have that big of a price jump. There's like almost a $200 price difference between the two models. And so you need to have a big justification. It needs to do something. It needs to fly, cook you dinner, and all of those things, which it does none of. But here's the thing. Apple is sexy. Apple is the sexy brand. It's sleek. Everybody, they barely have to do any advertising. If you see any, it's very little, because a lot of the reputation has been built by word of mouth and the sexiness and the sleekness of it. It's eye candy. It is electronic eye candy. So they really don't have to advertise or do very much to push their brand out there, because they've got that kind of name. So now I forgot my original point. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Divine Right says, very smart Dr. Vibe, no contracts. People will stand in line for hours overnight to get the latest and greatest smartphone. Insanity.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's what the iPhone X.
The iPhone
these
X.
Smartphones that cost $1,000. I'm like, I can't fathom spending money on a phone that is, equivalent to what rent or mortgage would be.
That's true. That's a very good point. That is a very, very, very good point. I know you keep on top of this stuff. Are there any things you're hearing about coming up between now and the end of the year, because we're getting close to mid-year? Is there any hot products that you've heard possibly will see before the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm trying to think that what's been happening a lot in terms of technology. Everybody, especially in the auto game, people are really about the autonomous cars. And despite some of the snafus that have happened with them, and some serious deadly snafus, these car companies are really trying to push this whole autonomous automobile thing. And even autonomous, I talked about on Mediascope, what was it, last week? The autonomous Uber, flying Uber, basically. So is it NASA and Uber have gotten together for this?
I believe so.
Yeah. So, you know, I think autonomous transportation really is the next big frontier in terms of technology. This is where we're going to see it because, let's face it, cities are overcrowded. There's so much driving. When I just think about when I first moved down here, going to South Beach, parking was nothing. I mean, yeah, you may have had to, you know, kind of look around a little bit, but you always found some place to park. Now, go an hour before because you know you're going to be spending time looking for parking. So you have more people that are not necessarily just moving here, but more people that are coming. And, you know, it's always been a tourist attraction. I'm sure Toronto is the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. Like,
so logistically, sorry, go ahead.
No, like in Toronto, during a weekday, rush hour is from 5 o'clock in the morning till 11 and 2 to 8. So the best time to drive on a weekday in Toronto is from 11 to 2.
Mm. Wow, which is why if you can work from home, it's great. So, you know, it's Toronto, it's probably places like Vancouver, it's Montreal, it's LA, San Francisco, Chicago,
yep,
Mexico City, but I'm just going all through North America, London. This is going to be an increasing, you know, problem as well. We're consumers. We are definitely consumers. We like cars, etc. So because of this problem, you can't keep widening the roads to accommodate more cars. That doesn't work. So you have to find other ways to accommodate this swell of people into urban areas. So I think transportation is this next big frontier. Everyone is trying to figure it out, and it's huge. So whether it's automated transportation or like now how Uber has invested in a electric bicycle company in San Francisco. So, yeah, transportation.
Wow. Okay, so that's. Do you hear or see any big advances between now and the end of the year, or do you think it still will take time?
You will see things. Everybody always presents something because it's like all these companies. You can't not have anything. So Apple, even though, to me, they have not had anything really groundbreaking in a very long time, they still have events twice a year. Even though they don't have a damn thing to say sometimes, they will still have events. So the conventional thinking is you still have to have something to present, even if it's just a concept or it's not all the way there, or I just added the color blue to this phone. I have to have something to present. So I don't know if between now and the end of the year we're going to get anything breaking or groundbreaking, but we will get things.
Well, Divine Right says, that's crazy, Dr. Vibe. I thought DC area was bad. This area is crazy. I mean... And it's getting that way on the weekends too. So that's how crazy Toronto has become traffic-wise. It was going to be interesting, as you said, the whole area of automation when it comes to cars. I think that's going to be a big, big, big moment.
They're going to have to. Anybody who is able to successfully, and I see this as being Elon Musk's area for some reason, I think he's going to be one of the players in this whole transportation thing because he has an interest there. If they could really figure the transportation thing out, particularly in areas like I lived in the DC area for 9 years. Great transportation. Of course, I had a car, but I took Metro a lot. New York's system is even better. It's not as clean, but it's even better because it's extensive. And so I basically, when I was in New York, just moved my car for alternate side parking and took the train everywhere, basically, because it went where I needed it to go. And then, but here, you look at a place like this and you think, oh, okay, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area is a major metropolitan. Yes, but it acts like a small town because the public transportation here is terrible. abysmal.
Wow.
So I see some strides being made in that area as well, to present to cities like Miami and Fort Lauderdale, etc.
Well, we have taken up more than enough of your time because this is the third conversation you've done in about 5 hours. So you do need a rest, and basically you did it solo because you didn't have your producer MC Curtis with you. So I know that's a little bit of a more to tag on to or do when you don't have a producer. I can relate. I don't have a producer, so I know what it's like. So we'd like to say thank you for taking the time. But before we let you go, a few things. What's your biggest hope for tech going forward, and what's your biggest concern for tech going forward?
Biggest hope to become more inclusive and to actually start to make more of a difference in the world. I see that technology can be exceedingly helpful in the developing world, whatever developing means. But I see that it can be, and I want it to be. The concern is that it won't be because of money. Wherever money is concerned, there's always a problem. I want for people to look at technology as solving problems like it has been, as opposed to a way to make money. And yes, it can be both, but I think it's been the latter now for too long. It's to solve problems, or you exacerbate or create problems so that this machine will solve it. There's a divide, and it's just in terms of computers, it's in terms of all kinds of technology. And so I'm hoping that people start to look at this from a humanistic standpoint and use technology to solve problems as opposed to just generate profit.
Well said. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You can get at me on Twitter. I am at Tachiada, Tachiada. That's one of my favorite platforms. I'm also on Instagram, which is great. That's Dr._Tachi. Mediascope is the show that I do every Wednesday, 5 p.m. on Instagram Live, and you can catch me there at Dr._Tachi. 6 p.m. on Periscope and Facebook Live. Periscope is the exact same handle as Twitter, at Tachiada. Facebook is the Mediascope page. So if you just look up Mediascope or go to facebook.com/Mediascope16, you can find me there.
Wonderful. But what about, and you have another show, don't you? Another podcast?
Sorry, yes.
Yes,
okay.
I always got to remind you.
Yeah, I do. So I'm also the co-host for a podcast called TV Channeling, which is all about television. We do television reviews and do television, film, and entertainment news. It's a weekly podcast that I do with my good friend Kevin Williams out in LA. And so it's a kind of bi-coastal type of thing. And that you can find us by going to tvchanneling.com, and on every single social platform we are TV Channeling. So just look up TV Channeling and you'll find us.
Wonderful. I'm Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. If you want to watch replays of my YouTube conversations, you're at the right place. If you want to listen to replays of, did I say listen to my replays? Watch my replays. You can go to you're at the right place. If you want to listen to my replays via audio, you can go to the website, thedrvibeshow.com. Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, selected audio replays are at thegoodmenproject.com, and WJMS Radio out of New York. Brand ambassador for Cuisine Noir magazine, the only magazine featuring African Americans in food, wine, and travel. That is at their website is cuisinenoirmag.com. Certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. If you'd like a complimentary 30-minute session, touch base with me. Twitter at drvibeshow. Email dr.vibe at thedrvibeshow.com. If you are a business or an entrepreneur and you'd like to get media promotion, I operate a service called Getting Media Coverage, where I help businesses and entrepreneurs get media promotion so they can elevate their business, product, or service. Finally, Monday nights, 9 p.m., at this same platform right now, I'm doing a series of conversations about CTE, the brain disorder, in collaboration with the Good Men Project, which is one of the most viewed sites in the world when it comes to men and manhood stories and conversation. So definitely check that out. I'm going to be on every Monday night from now to the end of June, and then maybe even further. They've got me booked. They've got guests for every Monday night. So if you want to find out more about CTE, everything from parents who have had sons and daughters die from CTE to ex-professional football players, some well-known professional football players from the 1980s and 1990s are coming on the Dr. Vibe Show to talk about CTE. First of all, Divine Right, thank you so much for helping make this an epic conversation. Trunks up, yes. And I know Dr. Tachi was commenting about Chadwick and his speech on the weekend.
What happened?
Chadwick at Howard.
Chadwick, yes.
Yes. So, and funny enough, myself, Tachi, and my dad have, well, I don't directly, but my dad, my father, and Tachi have something in common because they're both graduates of Howard. They're both Bisons.
Yay.
So there you go. And a little trivia note for everyone out there. My dad, when he was going to Howard University, one of his professors was the great Toni Morrison.
Amazing.
Maybe I should get him on the Dr. Vibe Show and talk about that experience.
You should.
That would be really phenomenal. I'm gonna have to work with him on that, and you'll probably find out where I got the gift of the gab from. Okay, Divine Right says yes, Chadwick was awesome, very much so, very, very much so. But I read a report the other day. He's sick of doing this.
Yeah, I just saw that. I just saw that. And I'm sure. But what he has to understand is that there has never been this much attention paid to. I mean, they're barely black Marvel heroes. So when you have this, that's a heavy burden to bear.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, you're gonna have to.
There you go. Sorry. There you go.
God chose you to do that, so I'm sorry. Yep. To whom much is given, much is required.
Exactly. So Divine Right, thank you. Everyone else who's watching live on the replay, thank you very much. Yes, next week at 9 p.m., Leah Miller will be back. So the Black Girl Magic will be ×2 next week. We had it only one this week, but I got it ×2, and look forward to it. And here's a special request you should have for Leah and Dr. Tachi. Bug them every time you see them. Ask them, when are they going to meet in person? Ask them that. Just bug them to do that. As always, 3 last things. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. God bless. Peace to you all. Keep the faith. Thanks for watching. And walk good. Good night.